At this point, my mother was completely distraught. At this point, she was flying back to the island of Boracay. She had finally been lent the 1,200 American dollars, and she had mounted an aerial search, which had proved fruitless. She got back to the island, and as you can imagine, she was really quite angry with God. She said she stormed up and down that beach saying, God, only 3 months ago, I gave my life to you, and I entrusted my children's life to you, and now you've stolen one of them away from me. What kind of a God are you anyway? She said she vacillated backwards and forwards between throwing herself on his mercy and being incredibly angry with him. But she finally came to a place where she realized, your children don't belong to you. Your children are on loan to you, a gift from God for as long as he sees fit, because we are our Father's children before we are our parents' children. She then walked into a little church which had clearly not been used a lot. One of the doors was hanging off its hinges, but she knew that she was in the house of the Lord. And there she felt God calling her to surrender her child back to him. And there, just as Abraham had once done with his son Isaac, she surrendered me back. And she said, God, I don't know why you're doing this to me, but I just ask that you will keep her safe. And God called out to her, not in an audible voice, what I believe is one of the most important statements of this entire testimony. You only have a piece of the puzzle. I have the whole plan. Trust me. And she did. She didn't believe that she would ever see me alive again, but she believed that God in his infinite wisdom knew what was best, because she was just the she was just the clay and he was the potter. She then got on a plane and went to Manila, and there she was picked up by Australian embassy officials. He took her back to his home and he sat her down and he said to her very, very brutally, Mrs. Hamilton, I don't know how to say this to you, but the chance that your daughter survived in that little craft she went out on in those terrible tropical storms is absolutely remote. But in the event that her body has been washed up somewhere on shore, would you like us to send it back to Australia? She said at that moment he may as well have picked up a dagger and plunged it straight through her heart. How was she as a mother to answer that question? Only 4 days ago, we were walking hand in hand down the beach talking about our wonderful future, and now I was suddenly a body to be zipped up in a bag and sent back to Australia? She said she could never answer him, and by the grace of God, she didn't have to, because suddenly the phone rang, and he very complacently dawdled up the stairs to answer it, but come bounding down 2 at a time saying, Mrs. Hamilton, you are not going to believe this, but your daughter Michelle is alive. She has been rescued by Filipino fishermen, and listen to this, she is in a hotel room in Manila, just 1 street away. Now that is a story about the glory of God. You know, it was as if we had gone out not really knowing God, but we come to a place of repentance and obedience, and 100% faith had brought us back to each other just 1 street away. It was the same God that had not only brought a daughter back to a mother, but the same God that had brought a daughter back to himself and back into his kingdom. You know, when I came back from the ocean, I truly believed that I'd been tested enough. You know, but even I, after that terrible ordeal I went through, God felt a need to test me again. I went through 6 months of being in bed with sickness. I went through financial poverty. I had unsaved loved ones. So I've been there. And I said to God, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to hurt me? And he said, no, I'm trying to bring you to a point of 100% faith. It is a daily walk. God has his hand outstretched to you tonight as he had his hand outstretched to me. And he's asking you, don't harden your heart tonight. Don't turn away from him. because He is a God of awesome power, incredible mercy, and amazing grace. And He can reach into your life and supernaturally change it. If you need a touch from heaven tonight, the Lord would like to give you one. But the one thing I found out about God is He doesn't break into your life. He needs permission to do a miracle in your life. And you give Him that permission when you give Him your faith. So if you've come here tonight seeking restoration, seeking a miracle, or seeking just to please the living God, then He is asking you to have faith. You know, you need to ask if you want to receive, and you can receive that faith tonight. So He has His hand outstretched to you. And for those of you who perhaps do not know the Lord, if you perhaps have backslidden, God is saying to you, don't wait till tomorrow. The enemy will say tomorrow. You know, when my mother told me about Jesus, I said, when I'm less successful, when I'm older, when I'm sicker. The enemy says tomorrow. Jesus says today. Today is the day of salvation. There is no other. Don't wait till 11 o'clock, 10:30, you could be taken. So He has that hand outstretched to you today. And He's asking you, don't turn away, but reach up and grab a hold of that hand of hope and say, yes, I believe, with 100% faith. Thank you.
Since Michelle's traumatic experience and miraculous rescue, she and her mother have not returned to Boracay Island. Upon arriving in Manila, they were inundated with interview requests from newspapers, magazines, and television networks. Within a short time, the media had dubbed her the Aussie Mermaid. Following a special ceremony honouring the crew of the rescue ship FV Alistar, Michelle and Rochelle returned to Australia, where they were reunited with Rochelle's two younger daughters, Angeline and Natalie. During the following 18 months, Michelle and Rochelle wrote the account of their ordeal, giving testimony to God's grace and power.